While in the car, the two didn't talk much. The deputy chief frequently glanced at Lu Xing through the rearview mirror, noticing he was constantly looking down at his phone, which left her feeling a tinge of disappointment. Although the situation had been resolved, the cause of the incident made him feel something was off. While contemplating the recent events, he checked his phone to search for any news related to the incident. Quickly, he found a plethora of information and news reports. As it turned out, there were enemy spies smuggling beasts across the border but had been caught. Reports hinted at the resurgence of hostilities between two countries and various theories on why beasts were increasingly invading cities, along with some conspiracy theories. After scanning through the information, Lu Sheng had a rough idea of the situation. Thinking about a scene 10,000 years from now in the dream realm where the civilization of martial arts had completely fallen into ruin and desolation, he suddenly felt a surge of inexplicable anger and irritation towards these internal strife and schemes among humanity. Despite having a common enemy, there were still nations engaging in internal divisions stabbing each other in the back. Lu Sheng certainly wanted to beat some sense into these people, but he knew his current strength was insufficient. However, if there came a day when he was strong enough, he had only one thought: to beat them so severely they wouldn't even be recognized by their own mothers. Seeing the change in Lu Sheng's expression through the rearview mirror, the deputy chief gently asked if something was wrong. Lu Sheng shook his head, telling her it was just some nonsense he had come across, but he would eventually solve all of it. Seeing Lu Sheng's response, she didn't press further. Soon, they arrived at the station, and Lu Sheng thanked the deputy chief before getting out of the car and heading towards the high-speed rail station with his backpack on his shoulders. The female deputy chief watched Lu Sheng's figure gradually disappearing in the crowd. Her usually composed demeanor now that of a smitten fangirl, her heart racing and beating fast in anticipation of their next meeting. Hopefully, it won't be too long. Back in White Lake City, Lu Sheng's hometown, students at his old school were taking a martial arts practical class in the gymnasium. A girl leaped up in the air and landed a flying kick which defeated a much taller and bullier male student. With just one hit, the seemingly stronger student lay on the ground, unable to get up, weakly conceding defeat. This was Lu Sheng's sister, Lu Qinghe, who received enthusiastic applause from the surrounding students. The teacher praised her nonstop, suggesting everyone learn from her. Lu Qinghe smiled and nodded before returning to her spot to wipe off her sweat with a towel. A few female classmates came over, who were all good friends with her, joking that Lu Qinghe was set to be the top student in the city. However, Lu Qinghe didn't seem enthusiastic about it. One of them asked why she wasn't excited. Rolling her eyes, Lu Qinghe expressed her frustration, saying that if they were also being constantly compared to her brother, a top national martial scholar, it wouldn't make them feel any better either. The two girls were momentarily left speechless, then clung to her arms, appearing like fangirls, asking when her brother would be free. They remembered he had once offered to treat them to a meal, but now they insisted that they would be happy to treat him as long as he could make it. Lu Qinghe wore a look of helplessness, wondering what exactly made her brother so appealing. She treated them as besties, and they wanted to become her sister-in-law. She hastily waved her hands, admitting she didn't even know what her brother was up to, only that he was attending the 7th Divine Martial University right now. Her friends persistently continued to nag her until she saw an opportunity to escape, running out of the gymnasium only to bump into someone solid as iron, causing her to fall on her butt. With a mix of annoyance and curiosity, Lu Qinghe looked up to see a handsome man smiling down at her, offering a hand to help her up. She couldn't believe her eyes, and in the next second, she leaped up and found herself hugging him. Lu Qinghe ecstatically jumped and asked Lu Sheng how he had come back so soon. Lu Sheng was slightly taken aback, not expecting such a joyful reaction. He recalled the last time Lu Qinghe hugged him like this was probably when they were in kindergarten. Smiling, he mentioned he had just completed a mission in a nearby city and decided to check in. Curious, Lu Qinghe inspected him all around for any gifts he might have brought. Nodding, Lu Sheng opened his backpack, prompting an eager and excited look from Lu Qinghe. However, the excitement quickly died off as he pulled out several bottles of what seemed like high-grade supplements, handing them to her while saying they would help her improve her martial strength. Catching them, Lu Qinghe let out a sigh and pouted, remarking that her brother was super dense and really didn't understand girls. Their warm sibling moment was abruptly interrupted by a basketball flying towards them. The ball, speeding towards Lu Sheng's head, could have caused a mild concussion to an ordinary person, but Lu Sheng, unafraid of even grandmasters, easily caught it with one hand. Narrowing his eyes, he looked towards a student walking up to them. Lu Qinghe looked at her brother with concern, asking if he was all right. Lu Sheng, with a smile, assured her there was no issue and casually tossed the basketball aside. The male student, rubbing his wrist and wearing a sport tank top, clearly the one who had thrown the basketball, kept his eyes on Lu Xing, especially noting how Lu Qinghe was holding onto the man's arm, causing his tone to be slightly hostile. However, Lu Qinghe was visibly annoyed by the student's presence, clearly not fond of him. As the student approached and stood in front of them, questioning who the man beside Lu Qinghe was, she rolled her eyes and deliberately leaned closer to Lu Sheng, dismissively telling him it was none of his business before pulling Lu Xing away, clearly not interested in engaging in further conversation. The male student, feeling provoked, loudly called out Lu Qinghe's name and, in a fit of anger, criticized her for bringing an old man to humiliate him. Even if she didn't like him, she didn't need to do that. The siblings looked at each other speechless. Lu Xing, pointing to himself, realized the student had referred to him as an old man, which was a slight blow to his ego. Lu Qinghe, infuriated, delivered a swift kick to the boy, targeting a particularly vulnerable spot that would incapacitate any man, martial artist or not. The boy instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Lu Sheng, witnessing the scene, felt a bit sorry for the student and even asked if he was all right. The boy, tears streaming down his face from the pain, managed to run off but not without turning back to threaten Lu Sheng, saying he would get someone to deal with him eventually. Well, this bonobo just done goofed. Lu Sheng obviously didn't take his words seriously. While watching the student's retreating figure, he actually found the situation quite amusing. He turned to his younger sister, laughing, while asking if the boy was someone trying to pursue her. Lu Qinghe, with a look of disgust, complained, saying the boy had been bothering her every other day, and it was super annoying. Regarding a boyfriend, Lu Qinghe believed that the person would at least need to defeat her in combat, but she doubted there was any boy in White Lake City capable of that. Lu Sheng, appearing thoughtful, entertained the possibility and solemnly advised her to stay away from anyone who suddenly transfers schools. Sitting in the back next to a window in the class who is secretive, likes to talk to themselves, confused, and even broke the fourth wall to tell Lu Xing he was in the wrong story, pointing out that they were in Apex Future Martial Arts, not these other stories. Jokes aside, she suddenly became curious and asked about the progress between Lu Sheng and Senior Yang. Lu Sheng looked at her confused, not catching her drift, and said they were just friends, and he treated her to meals every now and then. When she prodded him about whether they had held hands or watched movies together, Lu Sheng realized what she was getting at and pinched his sister's cheek in response. Lu Qinghe then remembered something else and mentioned that Lu Sheng's bestie, Ming, told him that Ming didn't get into a good martial arts university and decided to enlist in the military instead. He had wanted to say goodbye to Lu Xing, but by that time, Lu Xing had already left for the capital to attend university. Hearing this, Lu Xing immediately took out his phone to catch up with Ming, only to find out that Ming had joined the Eastern Military District. After sending the text, the siblings joyfully walked home, laughing and chatting. Meanwhile, in the new recruit training camp in the Eastern Military District, it wasn't so joyful for Ming, who was exhausted from a day's training. He was not heading back to his dormitory like everyone else. Instead, he was seen washing clothes with cold water. What's worse is that he isn't washing his own clothes, but doing laundry for someone else. Suddenly, a tall and burly recruit walked in and kicked over his wash basin, spilling everywhere. The recruit not only downplayed Ming, but went as far as calling him a fat ass. That wasn't it. The douchebag took off his socks and threw several other pairs of smelly socks onto Ming, telling him that today Ming was supposed to do his laundry and finish it before midnight. What's happening here is obvious. Douchebag older recruit bullying new recruits. Ming looked at the soaked clothes and the garments scattered around him. He clenched his fists tightly, having heard of bullying within the military, but recently, the behavior of these older recruits had become intolerable. What made it worse was his inability to fight back. The military is a dangerous career. Thus, the military district often gives soldiers enough freedom, such as having a phone on duty. Seeing Ming's lack of response, the older recruit kicked the basin aside again. But at that moment, Ming's phone began to vibrate with a new message alert. It was none other than Lu Xing. Ming was both surprised and stunned. The next second, he excitedly opened the messages to find a brief message from his best pal Lu Xing. It read, "You're in the Eastern Military District now, right? I'll be there soon. Wait for me," followed by an emoji. The message filled Ming's heart with warmth, instantly washing away his fatigue and the awful feeling of being bullied. With excitement, He began typing a flurry of messages to Lu Sheng, only to delete them over and over again. In the end, he simply replied with one word, "Okay." After sending the message, Ming bit his lip, struck by a sudden thought. Meanwhile, the bully who had been bullying Ming, seeing no reaction from him, decided not to continue and lost his interest. Instead, he turned around and mentioned casually that he liked the scent of a certain brand of laundry detergent and advised Ming not to use the wrong one. While humming a tune, he turned around with his hands in his pockets. Ming, glaring at the basin on the ground, then back at the towering recruit, and finally at the messages on his phone, charged at the recruit in a fit of rage. His outburst took the bully by surprise, and the two immediately grappled with each other. Ming's punches were all over the place. Other than the initial punch, every other punch was blocked by the bully. However, the bully seized an opportunity to land a blow on Ming's cheek, sending him flying several meters. Seeing Ming crashing hard to the ground, the recruit ran over and pinned Ming down, landing punch after punch on him while hurling insults. Several minutes later, he finally stood up, leaving Ming motionless on the ground. The recruit cursed once more and walked away, warning Ming he'd beat him up every time he saw him. At that moment, a seemingly nerdy new recruit who had watched everything unfold emerged from a corner, hurried over to Ming, and began checking on him. Unable to lift Ming's body, he kept asking how he was doing. Seeing Ming's swollen face, the recruit let out a sigh, puzzled as to why Ming would oppose someone who is stronger than he is and had been there for over 2 years already. End of the day, it's just a few pairs of socks to wash, clearly. The nerdy recruit chooses to wash socks rather than stand up for himself. However, Ming thought otherwise. Even in his disheveled state, Ming managed a prideful smile, saying his best friend was the national martial scholar and would surely be a general in the future. Ming expressed concern that being Lu Sheng's friend, if he was bowing down and being bullied into washing socks, would lead to people taking the opportunity for his mockery in the future. Not wanting to disgrace Lu Sheng in any way, shape, or form, he then laughed loudly, reminiscing about their shared past growing up and how Lu Sheng, despite attending the prestigious Divine Martial University, hadn't forgotten him. The nerdy recruit stared at him for a few seconds, then shook his head, thinking Ming had lost his mind from the beating and was rambling nonsensically. Meanwhile, on the other side, Lu Sheng once again entered the dream after completing a day's training. Finding a quiet place to sit, he then summoned Ellie to inquire about Ming's personal records. He remembered a month ago when he last checked Ming's record, he had chosen to enroll in a regular university and lead an ordinary life. However, this time, likely due to Lu Sheng's influence, a butterfly effect occurred, changing not only Lu Sheng himself but also the life paths of those around him. Ming was one of them. This time, Ming didn't choose to go to an average university but opted to enlist in the military, no doubt a decision fraught with danger in this era, battling beasts on the front line where the mortality rate was incredibly high. Lu Sheng felt a surge of worry, wondering if he had inadvertently caused harm to Ming. But as he delved deeper, Lu Sheng breathed a sigh of relief, and his smile grew wider. Turned out that Ming had been to the front lines multiple times, achieved numerous honors, and was eventually honorably discharged with his severance pay. Ming started a small business and opened his logistics company. By the age of 50, he had amassed a fortune worth tens of millions, leading a successful career and a happy family life. He was happily married and had 3 kids. Although he faced the misfortune of losing his wife in his later years and some setbacks thereafter, he ultimately led a fulfilling life, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, living to the ripe age of 90. Having gone through Ming's life record in its entirety, the last bit of worry in Lu Sheng's mind vanished completely. However, he felt that the best thing he could do for Ming right now was to keep his distance, as he believed this was the only way to not affect this happy future. He hoped that no further changes would occur in Ming's future, and that he could live a happy and long life. However, will this be the case? We will know later anyway. Closing his eyes, Lu Sheng left the dream realm and returned to the real world. The following day quickly arrived, and Lu Sheng decided to visit his pharmacy in White Lake City and meet with his future wife, Ling Su. Ling Su had been diligently working to expand their pharmacy business, and to date, they boasted 500 branches throughout the entire Dongning province. Lu Sheng nodded in approval of Ling Su's efforts, telling her that she did a great job, and it was the right decision to let her in charge of the business behind his back. However, Ling Su rolled her eyes when he complimented her work. As they discussed further expansion, Ling Su presented an investigation report. It turned out that someone was sabotaging their business from the shadows, and Ling Su's investigation revealed the culprit to be the highly influential Qin family from the capital. Lu Xing frowned, having anticipated such obstacles in the very beginning. Yet, he was not overly concerned. With a calm demeanor, he crumpled the investigation paper into a ball. In his mind, to mess with Ling Su was to provoke him directly, and he would soon make the perpetrators realize how foolish it was to cross him. Casually, he tossed the paper ball into a trash bin, causing Ling Su to be slightly dazed. Blinking a few times, she fixed her gaze on Lu Sheng. She could sense that in just 2 months, Lu Sheng had changed significantly. His confidence, composure, and dominance were even more attractive, making Ling Su's heart skip a beat. After a few minutes, Lu Sheng, dressed in a lab coat and carrying a box in his hand, entered the laboratory. With his psychic power, various ingredients from the box levitated and flew out in the air, neatly standing in front of Lu Sheng. He not only wanted to know the recent events from Ling Su, but his primary goal for the day was to formulate the latest supplement in preparation for advancing to the second stage of the immortal golden body. Quickly, he got to work. 2 days swiftly passed by. Next scene, we arrived at the World Trade International Hotel in White Lake City. Lu Xing entered the lobby and made his way directly to the hotel front desk, intending to book a high-quality suite for the night. He was finally ready to reach the second stage of the immortal golden body to perfection. To avoid disturbances at home, he chose to rent a hotel room. Instead, he carried with him 120 freshly concocted supplements. As Lu Xing was completing the check-in process, a figure approached the front desk. Judging by the scent of luxury brand perfume, the bright red nail polish, and her impressive figure, also carrying a suitcase, it was a woman. She pulled out her bank card as well as her ID while asking for a presidential suite without hesitation. Lu Sheng sensed something and glanced sideways. He felt the intense blood energy emanating from the woman standing next to him like a blazing furnace only seen on grandmasters. The woman had blonde short hair with a tattoo on her hand featuring the Roman numeral 9 with a sword piercing through it. Lu Xing was slightly surprised. He hadn't expected a grandmaster to visit a small city like White Lake City. What followed was the woman removed her sunglasses, revealing a beautiful face with long lashes over a pair of rare red eyes. The receptionist was momentarily taken aback by the blonde woman. Not only did she have an impressive physique and stunning beauty, but she also appeared to be very wealthy. However, after confirming her presidential suite booking, the woman handed over her credit card with a smile. She was also humming a tune and seemed to be in a very good mood. The check-in was quickly completed, and the receptionist handed over the room card as well as the credit card, offering to have someone escort her to her room and carry her luggage. The woman, with a polite smile, waved her hands, declined the offer, and headed toward the elevator with her suitcase in hand. Lu Xing observed the woman, finding it slightly surprising to see a grandmaster here in White Lake City. Although her blood energy level seemed slightly weaker compared to Vice Principal Zhao, at the end of the day, she was undeniably a legitimate grandmaster. Having completed his check-in as well, Lu Xing also approached the elevator where they exchanged glances. The woman looked at Lu Xing with an intrigued and seductive gaze while Lu Xing thought to himself that grandmasters were no longer a concern for him. However, since the woman did not appear to be a threat, he decided not to pay her any more attention and shifted his gaze away as they both entered the elevator. Inside the elevator, the woman tapped her ear lightly with a finger. Turned out she was reporting to someone that she had arrived at her destination. After a brief pause, she chuckled and mentioned to the person on the other end that she had encountered an interesting and quite handsome young man while checking into the hotel. This also piqued the interest of the person on the other end. Taking out a compact mirror and lipstick, she began touching up her makeup while mentioning that she couldn't gauge the young man's true strength, but he seemed to be quite powerful. She even speculated that he might be affiliated with the Dark Star. Either way, that's just her speculation. The woman's visit was primarily for a vacation. While deciding to complete an easy task on the side, she didn't quite care who Lu Xing really was. However, at the thought of anyone disrupting her holiday, she let out a cold smirk. After admiring her own reflection in the mirror and showing a satisfied smile, her expression revealed a trace of bloodthirst. Perhaps half-jokingly, she mentioned she might just have to devour anyone who dared to interfere with her plans. How you want to interpret her ways of devouring is up to your imagination. Shortly thereafter, Lu Sheng located his room and upon entering with his room card, he was very pleased with the accommodations, especially the large bathtub, which he noted could comfortably hold all his supplements. Without delay, he poured all the supplements into the tub and scanned the room with his psychic power for any cameras. Before stripping down all the way to his underwear and stepping into the tub filled with the light golden liquid. The liquid slightly rippled as he relaxed and lay down, beginning to cultivate and absorb the energy from the liquid. As he did so, the supplements in the bath began to form a dragon shape behind him. The light golden liquid, filled with immense energy, quickly rushed into Lu's body. However, this did not cause any pain, only a profound sense of comfort for him. At the same time, Sheng was not the only one enjoying a bath in the expansive presidential suite. The sound of running water echoed from the bathroom. Not long after, the water stopped. The woman dried off her body with a towel, then draped herself in very thin clothing, displaying her impressive body. Yet, instead of focusing on this, what we should be focusing on was the Roman numerals on her back. What did you think it represents? She lazily stretched out while musing to herself that the two little mice stealing gold mines had probably arrived in White Lake City by now. In response, she planned to deal with them swiftly before beginning to enjoy her holiday. Meanwhile, dense steam filled Sheng's bathroom, and the temperature was frighteningly high. Through the mist, one could see the liquid in the bathtub gradually evaporating. With his perfect physique and rock-solid 8-pack, Sheng continued to absorb the energy of the remaining liquid. At the same time, a halo was now visible behind him, indicating the completion of the second stage of his immortal golden body. He stepped out of the tub, the residual liquid tracing the contours of his muscles before slowly flowing down. Curious about his current body strength, Sheng tested it by trying to cut his arm with a spear, only to find a faint white mark that left no injury. Please do not try this at home. Sheng is a professional. Seeing the result, he concluded that not even a grandmaster using melee weapons could easily breach his defense. Evaporating the remaining liquid on his skin, he quickly got dressed while looking out the window, his body emanating powerful energy as he prepared to strive for the next level. He was getting insanely close to his goal. However, he took a deep breath to calm himself down, realizing that traditional martial artist level classifications might no longer apply to him. He was only one step away, but he wasn't ready to make that leap yet. He contemplated the disturbance his breakthrough would cause, potentially alarming even the great grandmasters. Since he had other plans in mind, he would have to wait just a little longer. Slowly opening the window, the night breeze from outside surged in, and in an instant, he jumped out from the window of the several dozen-story building. The end. Just kidding. However, please do not try this at home. At a crossroads not far from the hotel, a middle-aged man with a child hurriedly got into a taxi, urgently instructing the driver to head to the suburban area of the Western District. He appeared anxious and very tired, seeming like he hadn't slept for days, while the little girl seemed scared and hungry. However, she was very quiet, simply clutching tightly at her father's clothes. The taxi driver, without any hesitation, nodded with a smile and started the car. The middle-aged man clearly didn't see the driver had a tattoo on his arms. If you look closely, this tattoo is identical to the one seen on the blonde woman earlier. As the taxi started moving, the man's anxiety seemed to lessen slightly. Feeling temporarily relieved but still holding the little girl close in his arms, he whispered, looking out the window, "Have we finally escaped?" After covering several miles, halfway through the western suburbs, the middle-aged man instructed the taxi driver to stop and drop them off, offering to pay 3 times the agreed-upon fare. He emphasized that the driver should keep their destination and the presence of a man traveling with a child confidential if anyone inquired. The driver paused for a moment before slowly peeling off his face mask, revealing his true identity. With a calm demeanor, he remarked that paying triple might not suffice. Without hesitation, he removed the mask entirely, revealing himself to be the female grandmaster whom Sheng had encountered at the 5-star hotel. Her eyes gleamed with malice as she fixed her gaze upon the middle-aged man, finally catching up to them. Trembling with fear, the man recognized her, his dread intensifying upon noticing the distinctive tattoo of the number 9 in the attire she wore. She was the exact individual he had been desperately evading for days and nights. Meanwhile, after departing from the hotel, Sheng utilized the breath of wind technique to traverse the surrounding area until he arrived at an abandoned old factory. With each stride, he noted a significant increase in his speed, a testament to his breakthrough to the second stage of the golden immortal body. He had become so swift that even military surveillance devices couldn't detect his movements. Upon reaching the center of the dilapidated factory, he paused to survey the surroundings for any signs of surveillance. Satisfied that they were in a suitable location, Lu Sheng resolved to test his full strength without attracting unwanted attention. As his senses expanded to encompass the area, Lu Sheng detected several sharp auras slicing through the air within the confines of the old factory. Instantly recognizing them as the presence of masters, he braced himself for the impending confrontation. Lu Sheng pondered the scene before him, intrigued by the unfolding events. The middle-aged man, his back wounded and bleeding, raced through the desolate landscape with a child clutched tightly in his arms. Despite his injuries, he showed no signs of slowing down, driven by fear and desperation. Meanwhile, the blonde woman, revealed to be the ninth seal of an organization known as the Loop Seal, pursued them relentlessly, slicing through obstacles with ease. As Lu Sheng observed from a distance, he couldn't help but feel a sense of curiosity and excitement. Here was a real-life drama unfolding before his eyes, presenting him with an unexpected opportunity to test his abilities. The thrill of the chase, the danger in the air, it was all too exhilarating to ignore. With a swift movement, Lu Sheng darted towards the commotion, his senses heightened and his muscles tense for action. As he closed in on the scene, he could feel the presence of a grandmaster nearby, adding another layer of intrigue to the unfolding confrontation. Meanwhile, the man and the girl continued to flee for their lives, their panic palpable in the night air. The little girl, bloodied and trembling, clung to the man with frightened eyes, while he pressed on, his every step a testament to his determination to protect her at all costs. On the other side, the blonde woman exuded an air of cold confidence as she pursued her prey. Her movements were calculated and precise, a stark contrast to the chaos and fear that gripped her targets. With each stride, she closed the distance between them, her eyes fixed on her quarry with unwavering focus. As the tension mounted and the chase drew to its inevitable conclusion, Lu Sheng prepared himself for whatever lay ahead. Whether it was to intervene and aid the fleeing pair or to confront the pursuing grandmaster, he was ready to face whatever challenge awaited him. Isn't this just perfect? Lu Sheng thought to himself. Not only could he play the hero and take down the villain, but it also provided an unexpected opportunity to test his abilities. With a swift movement, Lu Sheng darted towards the direction of the screen. At the chemical plant, amidst the chaos, the female grandmaster launched a fierce kick towards the father-daughter duo. The father, clutching his daughter tightly, bore the brunt of the blow as they both tumbled to the ground, a gush of blood escaping his lips. The impact shattered the ground beneath them, sending rubble flying in all directions. Despite his injuries, the father shielded his daughter, pulling her close as debris rained down upon them. His cries of pain mingled with the chaos as he struggled to endure the agony. Witnessing her father's suffering, the little girl's heart wrenched with fear and concern. With tear-filled eyes, she called out to him, her voice trembling with emotion. Even in the face of imminent danger, the father summoned the last vestiges of his strength, attempting to crawl to safety with his precious daughter in tow. But their escape was abruptly halted as the female grandmaster materialized behind them, a sinister smirk playing on her lips. With malicious intent, she pressed her heel into the man's leg, eliciting agonized screams from him. The sight of her father in torment spurred the little girl into action. With determination fueled by love, she rose to her feet and bravely confronted the female grandmaster, her tiny fists flailing in a desperate attempt to defend her father. Yet, the female grandmaster merely chuckled in amusement, seizing the child by the scruff of her neck and hoisting her into the air. Despite the girl's cries of protest, the grandmaster remained unmoved, her focus fixed upon the fallen man. With a cruel gleam in her eyes, she taunted him, goading him to crawl and run once more so she could continue her sadistic game. Refusing to be cowed, the man clenched his fists, his body trembling with determination as he turned to face his tormentor. Through gritted teeth, he issued a dire ultimatum, warning the grandmaster to release his daughter or face the consequences. With a steely resolve, he revealed the deadly secret hidden within his mouth, a vial of poison poised to unleash oblivion upon him and all knowledge of the mind they guarded. The female grandmaster wasted no time. Seizing the man's face in a vice-like grip, she forced his mouth open in search of the hidden poison. Upon locating the toxic substance nestled within a tooth, she applied pressure and swiftly extracted several teeth, causing the man to cry out in agony. With a sadistic grin, she displayed the extracted teeth, taunting the man about his lack of alternatives for suicide. As a warning, she clamped down tightly on the little girl's mouth with the poison in her other hand, threatening to end the child's life unless the man divulged the information they sought. Overwhelmed by the impending tragedy, the father relented, his resolve crumbling as he begged the grandmaster to spare his daughter, agreeing to disclose everything. Suddenly, a figure sprinted towards the scene, Lu Sheng. Utilizing his mastery of the breath of wind technique, he swiftly liberated the little girl from the Grandmaster's clutches before she even registered his presence. Startled, the Grandmaster turned to face Lu Sheng, recognizing him from their previous encounter and sensing something unique about him. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng remained composed, maintaining a distance with the rescued girl clinging tightly to him. Fixing his gaze on the Grandmaster, he questioned her suitability as a master for resorting to harming a defenseless child. Caught off guard, the Grandmaster hesitated before inquiring if Lu Sheng belonged to the Dark Star faction. Observing him closely, she acknowledged his lack of master status but marveled at his formidable strength. Seizing the opportunity, Lu Sheng gently placed the girl on the ground and pressed the Grandmaster for information about Dark Star. In a sudden blur of movement, he disappeared and reappeared behind her, stunning her with his declaration of being the Sun incarnate. Before she could fully process his words, a massive hand loomed over her, casting her in the shadow of Lu Sheng's towering presence. Paralyzed with shock, she was powerless as he seized her face, his immense strength overwhelming her. With a swift motion, Lu Sheng slammed her into the ground with sheer force, causing the earth to quake and sending shockwaves rippling outward. As blood gushed from her nose and mouth, she attempted to speak but found herself silenced by Lu Sheng's relentless assault. Harnessing the power of his golden immortal body, Lu Sheng delivered another devastating blow, driving the Grandmaster deeper into the ground. The impact unleashed a surge of energy, culminating in a colossal explosion that reverberated through the surroundings. Amidst the settling dust, Lu Sheng surveyed the aftermath, finding the Grandmaster lifeless in a crater. Standing beside her motionless form, he remarked casually on her weakness. As Lu Sheng's formidable strength unfolded before them, the father and daughter trembled in terror, their fear palpable as he turned his gaze towards them. With a sudden outburst, the father emitted a shrill cry of alarm, overwhelmed by the sight before him. Stammering and flustered, he hastily agreed to divulge the whereabouts of the dense gold mine to Lu Sheng, pleading for their release in return. Yet, to their surprise, Lu Sheng displayed no interest in the information, opting instead to depart without further ado. The man struggled to comprehend the unexpected turn of events, cradling his daughter close as he questioned why the young boy had intervened on their behalf. Unperturbed, Lu Sheng offered a nonchalant explanation, stating that he had merely happened upon their predicament and assisted them without much thought. With the ordeal concluded, he saw no reason to linger, asserting that he had no need for the location of a single mine when his dream space could reveal countless unexplored locations worldwide. Moved by the boy's selfless act, the man tenderly reassured his daughter, affirming Lu Sheng's goodness for aiding them without seeking anything in return. However, their moment of relief was short-lived as the man suddenly convulsed, expelling a gush of blood from his lips. The father's body had been ravaged by the injuries sustained in the previous altercation, rendering him unable to continue on foot. Urgently, he urged his daughter to flee to safety and protect herself. Hearing the desperate plea, Lu Sheng swiftly returned, grasping the man's arm and hoisting him upright with a strength that astonished them both. Perplexed by this unexpected display of assistance, the man questioned why Lu Sheng would go to such lengths to aid them. With a resigned sigh, Lu Sheng explained that having already intervened once to extricate them from danger, he felt compelled to see their plight through to its conclusion, offering his aid without reservation. After some time had passed, Lu Sheng escorted the father-daughter duo to the five-star hotel where he was lodging. Upon arriving at his room, he gestured for the man to take a seat on the couch, graciously accepting the man's thanks for his assistance. Without delay, Lu Sheng retrieved a bottle of medicine and handed it to the man, instructing him to consume it. Sensing the need for privacy, the father gently urged his daughter to retire to bed, explaining that he needed to speak with Lu Sheng alone for a while. Reluctantly, the girl acquiesced and departed, leaving the two men to converse in solitude. As the door closed behind the little girl, Lu Sheng produced an item from his pocket and placed it on the table before the man. It was a ring, salvaged from the deceased female assassin's body. Curious about its significance, Lu Sheng queried the man regarding its origins, particularly its association with dense gold and the enigmatic Dark Star organization. In response, the man divulged that both the ring and the Dark Star were part of international organizations shrouded in mystery, operating clandestinely across numerous nations. He explained that the ring bore the imprint of a master-level martial artist, with the potential for even stronger imprints, such as divine imprints, to exist. Intrigued by the extent of these organizations' power, Lu Sheng pressed further, inquiring about the existence of grandmasters or martial saints within their ranks. However, The man admitted his lack of knowledge regarding such secretive matters. Lost in contemplation, Sheng resolved to seek answers from Ellie within the dream realm, recognizing the historical precedent of numerous organizations vying for supremacy against established world powers. Turning his attention back to the man, Sheng queried his intentions moving forward. The man expressed his intention to proceed cautiously, unwilling to impose further upon Sheng's kindness after all he had already done for them. Reflecting for a moment, Sheng conceived a plan, realizing that he possessed the means to resolve their predicament definitively.